Hi, welcome to Bookmark. I'm your host, Don Noble. Today's guest is South Carolina writer George Singleton. I spoke with George Singleton at Gorham's Bluff Lodge as a part of the annual celebration of Southern literature at Northeast Alabama Community College. George, it's good to see you again.
Good to see you, Don.
Last time you and I spoke, I think we were on the UAB campus, maybe in a quiet room in a library or something.
I think we were somewhere off a classroom. I remember that. Yeah. It's a big room.
And I remember a conversation that we had about writing and selling short stories. And I went away from that conversation. I was startled at the complexity of it. You write a story every how often, and you send them out, and you keep lists, and you.
Oh yeah.
All right, I want to hear this again.
I've slowed down a little bit.
How many stories in 52 weeks do you write?
If I'm on a good tear, and over the years and years, it would be 26 every 2 weeks.
You write a story every 2 weeks.
Pretty much, yeah. But lately, I'd say in the last 7 or 8 years, I've spun my wheels a little bit, but I'm still probably doing 15 or 20 a year and send out. And I have a little bit better luck because I'm older and figured out things. So one problem is, Hunter Thompson said that when the going gets weird, the weird get going. And in our times here in America, it's gotten weird. And maybe I'm not weird enough because I can't be as absurd as I want to be anymore because it's all in the newspaper,
Well, there's been an argument that fiction will be put out of business.
I think
but
so.
The argument's been going on for a long time.
Yeah, it has been.
So you write, and when we spoke, I remember you were speaking about lists. You had lists of journals and quarterlies, and you had lists of your stories. Do you still do that?
Oh, yeah. I do, just so I'll remember where I mailed the things, for one.
Yeah.
And also just kind of, this sounds bad, like sometimes a magazine will write or call or email and say, hey, do you have anything? And I'll say, yeah, no skin off my nose. If it's not good, I'll send another one. But kind of start at the ones that kind of pay the most, I guess. I've been sending the New Yorker now for 30-something years, and one day.
Not yet?
Not yet.
Well, you should, of course.
And usually when it gets down, if I have 8 or 10 rejections, I just kind of put it aside and say, maybe that one wasn't all that good. And that's okay.
There seems to be a consensus building here.
Yeah.
The short story, a while back, a year or two ago, I actually had an opportunity. I sat down with George Saunders.
Oh, wow.
And he had just published Lincoln in the Bardo.
Wow.
So he was having a great moment.
Yeah.
But he had already achieved a considerable amount of fame writing short stories.
Sure.
And my private thesis is that they are serious stories, and yours are wildly funny stories. You still think in a kind of Rodney Dangerfield way that
I love Rodney Dangerfield.
Yeah. Well, is it true that comics don't get no respect? Is that what's going on here?
Maybe, and they say that about the Academy Awards too. Like really good comic movies don't usually win. I think Civil War Land in Bad Decline by George Saunders is hilarious and sad. And I think what I'm trying to do, especially lately, is try to get funny and sad at the same time. It's hard to do. Writers I really admire, excuse me, Tim Gautreaux in his short story Welding with Children. It's hilarious and it's sad. That's hard to pull that off. But sometimes I kind of lean towards slapstick. Those are the ones that go 8 or 10 times and go back in the drawer and never get published. So
there are stories that are much more slapstick than these stories.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Well, all right.
Just imagine, Laurel and Hardy meet Three Stooges, those kind of stories.
But Gautreaux has the Clearing, for example. He's got a serious, tragic streak in him there.
He does. New book out by him, kind of a new and selected book of stories.
Yeah.
I forget the Signals, I think it's called. It's great.
he has to work in Louisiana. He has to work in southern Louisiana because he says he can't eat the food anywhere else. Seriously, he says, I can't live anywhere else. The food in
Too good.
is too good. He said,
Yeah.
there's no point living anywhere else. You've moved a couple of times. Where are you now?
Spartanburg, South Carolina. So I've only moved 40 miles from the last time we
You were
met.
with the governor's school.
I was at the
Is
South
that
Carolina
right?
Governor's School for the Arts and Humanities. I taught there 13 years.
Yeah.
And then this college, Wofford College, made me an offer I couldn't refuse. So I've been there 5 years.
You notice any life-changing difference between teaching people who are 16 and teaching people who are 19?
Yeah,
Yeah.
The difference between those two schools, Governor's School, those kids want to write. They're there to write. They're really wanting. You know, I'm teaching some classes. I volunteered to teach Humanities 101 or English 102.
Yeah.
A lot of the students don't want to be in there. But as I see it, I'm making a farm club. You know, I just have a farm club. And by the time they get to my fiction writing class, if they wish to do that against their parents' wishes, because they are supposed to be studying medicine or accounting or something, now they've read a bunch of stuff. So they're good and serious and fun and smart.
You're not telling these people that they're going to get rich and famous writing short stories.
Yeah, I
hope.
might tell them that just out of meanness. No.
But their parents
I say,
don't want to hear it.
same thing that was told to me is it's a 10-year bet with yourself, and you're not going to be ready till about 1,000 pages. And they if they're meant to do it, they'll continue.
This is not an answerable question, but it is a real question. In America, I'm just recently reading Tom Friedman's book, Thank You for Being Late, which is about the incredible acceleration of change in America, and change, not
yeah.
silver, but
Yeah.
progress, technology, and so on, and how we are all rushed, we are all impatient, we don't have a minute. In the environment that we're in, people ought to be reading short stories.
I would think.
But they want 500-page novels. I would bet anything that you've given this a lot of thought.
I have. I've thought about writing a haiku, because you would think that with
Yeah.
attention spans, I don't get it, but it's, dogs may bark and the caravan rolls on. I'll just continue. I know I'm a better short story writer than anything else, and I really like doing it. So it's
It is your métier. You should do it.
Yeah.
That's not. But people were always used to nag you all the time about writing a novel. So you wrote a novel called a novel
Yeah.
about a sort of a
That was just
third-rate artist colony.
A metaphysical experiment, a metafictional experiment, and maybe metaphysical too. And then I wrote another one that was just a short story that got out of control called Work Shirts for Mad Men, and I'm not real unhappy with that. But to be honest, Don, I'll write something and get it done, and that's dead meat. I mean, that's gone. I don't really remember. When we were just sitting here talking before, and you said, "Oh, there's that scene," and in my brain, I'm going, "That sounds like something I wrote," but I couldn't remember. I couldn't tell you the story.
Right. You've taught writing for
30,
probably now 25 years.
30 something.
30
Yeah.
something. And you have published a book on an instruction manual on writing. And I have it here. I was paging through it the other day. What is your best advice? If you hand that book to someone, what are the pieces of advice in that book? I guess all writers write one eventually.
A lot of it has to do with patience, like you're talking, because everything is so fast, and self-publishing is so easy now. And I say, don't do that. If you self-publishing is just, there's a reason probably why it's being self-published. I see self-published books. People send them to me. Will you do a blurb for this?
Yeah.
And I'll go, I'll read it till the first typo, and then I'll stop about page 2. Because it's just going to be rough. So mine's about patience. A lot of those things is called pep talks, warnings, and screeds. That whole book was written as kind of somewhere between a practical joke and a dare. So I wrote it, and my buddy Danny Wallace from Alabama said, "I want to do the illustrations for it." So we went in together. I'd write something, he would draw something, he'd draw something, I'd write something. But it's kind of just keeping your rear end in a chair is it. For me, and my advice to my students is, a lot of times I'll be upstairs writing and I'll say, "What's that word I'm thinking about?" it'll hit me when I get downstairs with my coffee, and I'll get coffee and say, oh, look, MSNBC's on, or PBS is on, or whatever's on. I'll start watching that. An hour
Yep,
later,
yep.
I haven't thought of the word, and I've quit writing for the day. So
Well, those cartoons, Daniel's cartoons are always wonderful.
great, yeah.
And he and I were talking a while back. He gets a lot more money, for his magazine articles than other people get because he illustrates them.
Oh, does he really?
Yes, and he charges for the cartoons.
Oh, yeah.
And he gets paid more for the cartoons sometimes than for the text, which
He's a great.
we should all learn
He's
to
a great
do cartoons.
I can only do stick figures.
Right. You have two relatively new volumes of stories. The previous one, Callistown's the newest one, but Between Wrecks is now a few years old. Callistown is linked,
Yeah,
all by place.
Right.
What about Between Wrecks? What is the glue that holds that volume together?
Here's a story when I was fighting with, oh, you better go write a novel. Gosh, I hope I didn't tell this story the last time we were on. I had
You couldn't have.
I had that novel I wrote called, no, because it was after I met you. I had this novel called Work Shirts for Mad Men. For some reason, the copy editor was an 80-year-old New York woman who used to work at the New Yorker. It had been subcontracted out because my copy editor had to go visit his mom. She changed a lot in the dialogue. I had people saying like, I ain't got no money, and she would change it to, I do not have money. It was in dialogue, right? Or I had a lot of things like, I only want to go home and take a nap, and she changed it to, I want only to go take a nap. So I was writing stet all over the sides. 180 times I wrote stet. Finally got sent back to the normal copy editor, a guy named David Huff, and he said, I had a feeling that wasn't going to work out all that well. Then I thought, because I don't have anything to do in South Carolina, I'm going to write a whole bunch of stories about a character named Stet. Stet means let it stand,
Yeah.
In editor talk. So then I thought, because then they'll read it and they'll see Stet and the editor will get all confused. Do I let it stand or whatever? I didn't have anything to do. So I wrote Stray Decorum and Between Wrecks were supposed to be all together, and half of that book was going to be a guy named Stet Looper telling stories, and half of the book was a guy named Stet Looper who was going to be a minor character. Agent said, well, first you got to write a novel, and two, no one's going to buy a 400-page book of stories, a 350-page book of stories. So it got cut in half. So there was one called Stray Decorum, one called Between Wrecks, that all have a character named Stet Looper somewhere in every story. Then came this Callistown book. So that's kind of how that.
The town Callistown. Describe it for us.
Yeah, what I write a lot about is in South Carolina, there are 1 million ex-cotton mill towns.
Yeah.
1 million once thriving cotton mill towns. I don't know how many, they've all kind of reinvented themselves. I don't know how, Greenville, South Carolina, Spartanburg, South Carolina, now those cotton mills are high-priced condominiums. I don't know where these people are, they're all working at BMW, I guess, but they can afford to pay the condo fees or the rent or whatever it is. So Callistown is a town, ex-cotton mill town, that hasn't quite reinvented itself, and the people of Callistown are trying their best to figure out a way to, get back on their feet.
This town is doomed.
Oh, it's way
This town
doomed.
is selling stock. Don't buy it. 90% of all the people in this town have two last names,
Munson and Harrell, yeah,
and if they intermarry anymore, they won't have eyelids.
right.
I mean, this town.
You won't get your ankles wet walking across the gene pool.
What is it? You have a phrase in there that says something like the gene pool was not big enough to cast a mirage.
Yeah,
or something like
really,
that.
yeah.
There is a description they're trying different. The people in this town are trying different things to revive themselves, and
Yeah.
they're trying festivals and trying to get into the Guinness Book of Records and all kinds
Yeah.
of stuff. But there are a couple of funny little descriptive paragraphs. I wish you could.
Yeah, you want to hear?
That there's one in particular that I think describes
This is
Callistown's biggest complaint historically, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah. About Sherman didn't even want to march through that town, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the kids, 6th grade boys, go over to their sixth grade teacher's house to learn about sex ed from the sixth grade teacher's husband, who drives a meat truck or something. But here's kind of the beginning of that. It's called Fresh Meat on Wheels. Oh, sorry, glasses. Before ceremonially burning down a life-size replica of the Callistown Courthouse, which never existed in the first place, built over the previous year in a field adjacent to Mr. Morris's tree farm and nursery, it was tradition to take every sixth grader to the various attractions nearby. This included the Finger Museum, where a man had severed digits floating in formaldehyde from all the pulpwood men who had chainsaw accidents over the years. Then we would all go via minibus to a taxidermist place where he'd set up the safest petting zoo ever. Our sixth grade teacher, Ms. Whalen, said we were to understand what there is to appreciate about our hometown before viewing what General Sherman could have done if he understood Callistown's meaningfulness and not veered away on his march between Savannah and Columbia. My heart wasn't into this bastardized field trip because, and it's not like I had ESP back then, I foresaw the possible arguments, fistfights, and one-upmanship that would occur. If I had extrasensory perception back then, I would have found my mother in the organic berry field she and my father operated, and I would have said something like, "Please tell me the sexual intercourse y'all have told me about is not like," oh, and then I can't read anymore, "sticking something in an armpit, we're going to have to cut part of this, right?" And then it goes on about these poor kids having to go to a kind of a sleepover, and they're fishing for mice in someone's basement or something, which kind
Well, they've cut a hole in the living room floor.
yeah,
and
it's kind of. I think after I wrote this and it got published and everything, and then I was rereading Lewis Norden, a writer I admired deeply, and I went, "Oh man, he's got somebody catching chickens with a fishing pole,
Does he?
underneath the house, yeah."
Politically incorrect. I mean, at this point, anybody older than 45 or so is politically incorrect about half the time because the rules keep changing.
Yeah.
But you have a story called Spastic.
Oh boy.
In which there is a fellow who is a talent scout for athletes.
Yeah, University of Oregon. Yeah, he's a scout.
He's traveling around looking for undiscovered high school athletes.
Yeah. And he comes into this place where the people of Callistown, the men of Callistown, are sitting around trying to figure out how they can become famous, so maybe attract people to come there.
Yes, and some of them have attempted other things.
Yeah, you want me to read that little part?
Sure, that little bit about
This
things
is
they've
in
tried.
third person. The Callistown station remains open 24 hours a day, though no Greyhound or Trailways bus is pulled up for passengers to disembark in 15 years. The building, which is plastered over cement blocks that nearly look stucco, thus exotic among the mobile homes, wooden bungalows, shingle-sided shotgun shacks, and fieldstone salt boxes. This building holds still a linoleum-floored waiting room with chairs shoved in 3 rows along the walls. There are 2 restrooms, both with working sinks and toilets, and a glass-fronted booth where someone sold tickets, offered advice, and tagged luggage. Television's mounted in the southwest corner of the waiting room, 6 inches from touching the ceiling. There's a half-filled gumball machine, the proceeds of which aid small children with birth defects. No one has ever thought to crack open the globe and steal its pennies. An empty cigarette machine with a rust-splattered mirror and rusted silver knob stands in the corner. $1.75 a pack for Lark, Camel, Lucky Strikes, Pell Mell, Viceroy, Kent, Winston, Marlboro. There's the smell of juicy fruit in the air, of plastic, of instant coffee. Okay, then this guy shows up named Max Sloan. He's kind of lost, and he's in this town. He's looking for this young man, and he walks in where all these men are congregated. Max Sloan nods at the men. Money Munson stands up and turns the volume knob. He says, "Are you the man from the Guinness Book of Records we've been waiting on?" Max shakes his head. He says, "I'm turned around a little. Any of you men know where I can find the local high school?" Flint Harrell stands up and leans backward awkwardly so that this stranger, the first non-Callistowner to enter the bus station in 15 years, can admire Flint's gold-plated belt buckle embossed with Southern Region, District 4, Level 6, Senior Division, 3rd place, horseshoes. Flint says, If you look and catch a ride there from here, you're late by 1996. Last bus come through here ended up taking people down to those Atlanta Olympics. Max Sloan does not feel threatened. He almost laughs. This is perfect. He loves being the first scout in a backwards area, coming out of nowhere like some kind of savior to extract an unknown high school athlete from humble beginnings, promise questionable future monetary outcomes. He says, no, I got a car out front. I'm just looking for the high school. Money Munson says, we've been waiting on the world record, fella. Me and Lloyd one time played dominoes for 67 straight hours straight. That's got to be some kind of record. And then, as if in a rural AA meeting, when the floor opens up for personal testimonial one-upmanship, each man offers his declaration. I can lace a pair of logging boots in 14 seconds. I ate 4 whole barbecued armadillos in 12 minutes. I've stared at 32 solar eclipses and ain't gone blind yet. I trained an ostrich to clean gutters. Max Sloan says, okay, this sounds like quite a town. And then it goes on from there.
And he finds a boy who could run the quarter mile faster than anybody else because he ties tourniquets around his arms so the arms don't get any oxygen.
So he gets all torso, his heart, his
heart and
it's
legs.
kind of like if you're a distance runner and you're trying to keep your arms parallel to the ground to keep that blood flow right there.
I'm almost embarrassed to say this because it's such a writerly question, but if you're writing a story every couple of weeks, and the stories are rich in ideas and imagination and oddity, and where the devil do all those strange thoughts come from?
I just steal them.
Where do you steal them from?
Flea market, Walmart. I hate to say it. Walmart's been good to me. Anywhere I've probably told this story. I think there's a. It used to be kind of Old South and New South. Now there's still Old South and New South, and there's a New South. And I've lived around people. I live in the country now. There are people who have llamas and emus, and some people who have cattle. And one time, this is some years back, a guy was buying beer in a Texaco station, and a man came up in a horse trailer, and he had some llamas in the back of the horse trailer. And the guy in front of me, he wasn't wearing shoes or a shirt, and he had a big beer belly. So I'm thinking, what happened to that no shoes, no shirt law? I thought that was a law, but anyway, he's standing there, and he looked out at that horse trailer, and he looked back at me, and he said, what the hell kind of donkeys is them? And I went, I got to go home and write now, bye.
So it's delivered unto you.
Yeah, it seems to be manna coming down from heaven,
Oh.
A little bit. I kind of make stuff up, but.
Well, you're moving forward. There'll be more stories. What's up next? What happens next? The next book, the next 2 books. There's stuff at the press, stuff being written. What are you doing?
Stuff right now. And when you're talking about the link stories, that's I've just been doing that just because it gives me some kind of focus. But next book is coming out with LSU Press. It'll be out in about 10 months, 11 months, beginning of 2019. It's called Staff Picks. Because I'm thinking, see, one of the stories is called Staff Picks. No, it's called Staff Picks, but I'm thinking that people will see this book in a bookstore and go, it must be a good book because the staff has picked it. Those are the kind of things I'm sitting around scamming all the time.
I like Staff Picks.
I think there's 13 or 14 stories. They've come out in Atlantic Monthly and one story in Oxford American, and good magazines.
Although, why I want my reading chosen by children beats me. You go to the store. The staff is 19 years old.
Yeah, I know. And usually
I don't want their picks.
I
want my picks.
They can tell you where the coffee is sometimes. I'm not saying this about all.
No.
Some of the big chains I haven't been in years because what am I going to get there?
That book's done.
That book's
That's
done.
That's the LSU book.
Now,
what are you working on?
Now I'm working on a story about a guy. I got to think of what his name is. Julian, and Julian Walker. When he was growing up, his dad. These are linked stories too. His father had a pet name for him because he thought Julian sounded like a woman's name, and the mother had kind of named him. But he's going to marry a woman who teaches at a small college who is a gender studies professor. And she's going to be complaining a lot. It's my way of kind of writing an academic bunch of stories without anyone ever thinking it's me.
Are you a reader of Michael Malone? Do you know a book
yes,
called Fool's Cap?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes. And,
Yeah.
and I think about those books, I'm a little bit gun shy because of people like Straight Man by Richard
Yes,
Russo
right.
or Moo by Jane Smiley. So I've kind of
Right.
held back on writing academic, but I figure if I have an antagonist kind of telling stories.
There's a
get
new
away.
academic novel translated from French. It's called The Seventh Function of Language.
Ooh,
And
good title.
I've just bought it, and I'm starting to read it, and I was just intoxicated. Someone goes around killing the theorists. They kill Roland. They kill Roland Barthes first, and they move on, and they kill De Man and Lacan
Jacques
and
Derrida.
And I thought someone should. And now in this book, someone has. Writers don't care much for theory.
Oh, no. I don't even know this stuff. I stay away from it because if I start thinking about that, I don't think I'd ever write again, you know.
No, the death. The literary critical theory is the death of literature,
Of fiction,
as
yeah.
we understand
Yeah,
it.
it is.
George, always a pleasure.
Hey,
thank you for
Don.
coming in.
Thank you so much.